Arthur is looking very festive today. We're just days away from Christmas. Glad you've joined me today. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to talk about sci-fi today. I know. Coming up next on Pastor Bob's Coffee Break. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, our podcast is brought to you by our very own Headbangers Brew. Just the best coffee in the world. And you can get that in our mugs and our t-shirts and our posters. And we got so much cool stuff right here. We are metal, we are family.com. Well, here's the question for today, and I love this. Dear Pastor Bob, I live in South Africa. Love South Africa, by the way. I like reading sci-fi and fantasy books, and I'm a big J R R Tolkien fan. I don't know if you've ever been asked this before, but are you a sci-fi and fantasy book lover? And if you are, what are some of your favorites? So it's a great question. We're keeping it a little lighter today, but I love this question, and yes, I am. The answer is yes. Let me tell you how much of a fan I am of Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. I've spent some time in the little pub where they used to write. They had a group of guys, and they were basically all professors at Cambridge University in the UK. And right by Cambridge is this little pub called the Eagle and the Child. A cool little pub, just a little hole in the wall, very old and very unassuming. There's no fanfare, there's no big signs pointing and saying this is where Tolkien and C.S. Lewis used to write. But everything's original. And so in the pub itself is a little plaque. Well, actually, it's a handwritten message that's framed on the wall by the table where Tolkien and C.S. Lewis used to sit and write a lot of their stuff. I sat there. And it says, I think it's from C.S. Lewis, and it says, thank you for all the putting up with us all the times that we've been here, something like that. And it's right there on the wall. And again, it's just a little hole in the wall. Just a very average pub, unless you see the little poster thing on the wall, the little framed note, but that's where they used to sit and write. And I tried to soak up their inspiration. I wish I could write like that, both of them. But let me just tell you, the writer of this question, I love fantasy, sci-fi, really love it. And I especially love C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. And there are others that I've read too that I've really enjoyed. I like Ted Dekker a lot. Really some cool stuff. And boy, there you really get into fantasy. And Frank Peretti, of course. A lot of you have read a lot of his books. You know, it's interesting. Jesus told a lot of parables. He told a lot of stories. He believed in telling stories to illustrate something, and I like that. You know, you pick up a C.S. Lewis book, and the analogies are there. You know, Aslan the lion, you know, is a type and shadow, we call it, of Jesus Christ, and there are characters that are kind of playing out Christian morality and biblical principles, and it's kind of it's cool. And you know, you find that in a lot of these, and it's the classic struggle of good versus evil, and I love it when good wins. Not just good, but biblical good wins. And I appreciate these Christian authors that have done such a phenomenal job in keeping our attention. So Jesus used these parables, and he wasn't a sci-fi writer, but he knew the power of a story, and I like that. And many of the great sci-fi Christian writers today have used this same kind of storytelling to illustrate a feeling, illustrate a point, illustrate a fight between good and evil. And as I'm talking, so many other authors are going through my head that have done such a great job. But let me just say, I love getting lost in a good book, and I hope you do too. There's a whole other world right there when you open up the pages and you're able to read. But here's our warning from the Bible, and it's found in 1 Peter 3:15. And I'm extrapolating this out of a chapter, and I'm pulling it out, but it doesn't lose its meaning. It says, "But in your hearts set Christ apart as holy, acknowledging him, giving him first place in your lives as Lord." So I guess when I'm filtering through sci-fi fantasy, and there's a fine line between sci-fi fantasy and horror movies, and I don't go into that because I don't think that's a good idea, honestly. And a lot of people say, well, I love horror movies. I love, that macabre. I love the dark side and exploring that. And, I don't mind the dark side as long as the good versus evil is there and it doesn't get too dark. You know what I mean? But giving him first place, realizing that not every book that you pick up is good for you. And I think the parameters that we use in what kind of books should we buy should be the classic battle that teaches us moral lessons. Well, folks, don't forget, you are blessed. So go and be a blessing.